Welcome back to the AI Accelerator Podcast. I'm Matt Zembruski, and today I'm joined by someone who lives right at the front line of enterprise AI adoption. Chris Seferlis is a director of technology strategist at Microsoft on the Azure AI side. He's a lecturer at Boston University, published author, keynote speaker. He does a lot, and we're going to learn more about him and what he can offer you and really get your mind programming into a better place. Chris spends his days advising VPs, C-suite leaders on how to actually put AI to work. That's what we're all about here on this podcast, right? How to put it to work, not about the hype, but about the reality of what actually works. We're going to get into where companies are getting stuck today, what's working right now in the Microsoft ecosystem, how leaders can move faster without breaking the bones of their company. Chris, great to have you on.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And I'd love for the audience just to get to know you a little bit better. We had a chance to connect earlier, but if you could just describe a little bit about your background leading up to where you're at today, your role with Microsoft, and sort of what you're passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in IT, right? Pretty much right out of high school, internships as I was going through school. Spent a little time in the Army, and really those kinds of things kind of shape how you see the world and gain perspective, right? And so I did over 20 years in IT, and I really started to hit a wall, just started to feel burnt out and things like that. Had an opportunity to kind of come over to the, sales side, if you will. I don't call myself a salesperson, but, really more of that technical advisor, solution advisor, strategy advisor. And so, been here at Microsoft about 7 years now, just over 7 years, matter of fact. And, really still like to do a lot of stuff in the way of tech, so if I'm playing around with the systems, building my own sort of agents and stuff like that, really kind of like to dig in. And then, otherwise, a lot of outdoor stuff, fishing, swimming, biking, hiking, all that kind of good stuff too, up here in the Boston area.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm in the Boston area too, as you know, and it's exciting to see a lot of for those of you who are on the video, and you can see that a lot of good Boston sports paraphernalia behind Chris there. A lot big Boston sports fan, which is always great to see. So, Chris, let's jump into the practical reality of some of the conversations that you have. Like you're talking to C-suite leaders, vice presidents, senior executives at companies all day, right? You represent Microsoft and the technology, and there's just so much happening in technology and AI today, as you know. So when you walk into a company, what's the most common thing that you think the leaders are getting wrong about where AI actually is right now?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. We see published reports by like MIT. 95% of AI projects fail to meet the expectations, right? And what I find is that a lot of times the plans are kind of half-baked. It doesn't mean that the project won't have any value. It's a matter of sort of building it in the right way and understanding really what we're working for, right? We talk more about business objectives and how to get the organization to adapt to all this new technology. And so I'd say the biggest thing is, a lot of executives are really excited about the prospect of AI. Hopefully it's less on the side of job replacement and more on the side of productivity, revenue growth, cost reductions, things like that. And what I find is that a lot of times there isn't the attention that needs to be paid to really understand where the value is going to come from, some of these automations and productivity gains and things like that.
You just think it's sort of a miss. Let's click on that just a little deeper, more on that. So it sounds, the MIT study, a lot of people are probably familiar with at this point. I think it's been many months, maybe it's been close to a year. It's been a little while, but yeah, they say like 95% of the AI projects are failing. So you're saying there the leaders, because I've seen the same, where leaders are really clear on like, okay, I want this improvement done to my organization. Maybe it's like we need to get more sales or better controlled costs or better operational efficiencies, whatever it is. So you say they have some clarity of objectives, but not really understanding how to apply AI and how to consistently carry it to the end line and sort of measure success.
Right.
It's a little loosey-goosey from a project perspective.
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into it. The quality of the data that we're using. Really pinning down what are those objectives? What are we working toward, and how do we measure success? Right. If that isn't defined up front, then yeah, 95% of organizations are disappointed with the outcome. The projects aren't necessarily failures. Perhaps they're a starting point, right? Perhaps they're a foundation that the team can grow on, because now they've gone through the paces, they understand where they might have made some errors, what things went really really well, and even some of the challenges around change management, the culture of the organization and stuff like that, right? So you get a lot of those things that get mixed in. It's not a very simple, cut and dry. We're going to implement X, and it's going to save us 10% a month, right? It's not as simple as that.
Yeah, I've noticed the exact same thing. There's a lot more nuance to it, and the media often is not our friend in trying to get to a positive outcome. There's a lot of fear and noise out there in the media about AI. It's shifting all the time and different storylines. From where you sit, what's the reality that executives need to hear instead? Like, what's more of the truth about AI to bring us to that positive, successful outcome that the companies want to get to?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big ones that we see a lot is that XYZ company has cut X amount of headcount because they're going to use AI instead. I sat in a Gartner conference in the fall. And, they said flat out, we have zero tangible evidence of organizations being able to replace headcount with AI at this point, right? I mean, there are definitely some automations, but they've been going on for a long time, right? So smart factories, this isn't new. Robotic process automation, RPA, this isn't new. And so, yeah, maybe some organizations are starting to see some of those gains from those projects. But the idea that, the advancements with LLMs are going to replace everybody that's a white collar worker in the next 18 months is just insane to me. And more recently, we've seen, Sam Altman and Daria from Anthropic. I'm trying to remember his last name. Yeah, thank you. And they've both sort of walked back their, we're going to replace, a large portion of the workforce with AI in the last couple of weeks here, right? So at the same time, this stuff is advancing so quickly, and a lot of times it really just has to do with how the focus on the various environments look. Microsoft has our build conference right now, as a matter of fact, out in San Francisco. And we had a bunch of announcements yesterday. Some things around personal productivity, some things around quantum, some things around new AI models to help cut some of the costs that it takes to run these things. And some of the stuff is somewhat of an advancement on prior technology. Some of it is a new look at things, and we have to see how the market's going to react, right? And so there's a lot of exciting stuff out there. Like you said, there's a lot of fear that gets put out as well, and whether it's competition that's putting fear out there, or just the salacious headlines that get you to read, or the clickbait, right? All that. It's just, do your homework, right? Cut through the noise. I understand we're all busy, but if this is something that you believe will make that impact, really do the homework.
Yeah, that's great advice. Let's talk about things that some things that only you could talk about, Chris. You're some of the only people about the Microsoft ecosystem related to technology and people and all the advancements. I mean, you have a very unique perspective on this to share with our listeners. I want to get into this. So a lot of executives sitting out there, they've been working with Microsoft technology, Office 365, Microsoft 365 infrastructure has been built into their organizations for years, especially mid-market, large enterprise. Large, obviously the incumbent provider out there. When it comes to AI, the recent shift in recent years, right? They're on either the free Copilot license, or maybe they're on a basic version of Copilot license. Can you help explain, sort of just cut through, because you understand the technology, the people, and everything that's going on? what's your basic advice to companies out there that are trying to figure out how they can best adopt the Microsoft tools? How they can best bring AI into their organization, into their workforce, as you had talked about, to really empower their people and really unlock some of the value in the organization. What's your next step advice there?
Yeah, and it's interesting, like you mentioned, the free version of Copilot. It's a Copilot chat, right? It's built into the browser, and it's free for anybody who has a Microsoft 365 license of any kind, right? And primarily that's going to be based on web results. So it's going to be similar to the free version of ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of those, right? And the benefit to doing that step up license to the Microsoft 365 Copilot is now it's using a contextual layer from all of the data that you have access to. And that's a key point, is that it's the data that you have access to. So if you're a CEO, you should probably be able to see just about everything, right? Unless there's some kind of legal reason or something like that, but pretty much everything. But if you're, a data engineer, you're going to have guardrails. And the tools can be used in so many different ways. And again, the advancements that are coming through, things like co-work that we're designing and building with Anthropic directly, where you sort of have these multi-chain processes where you step through all of it, right? And it just aligns as an automation piece, taking the approach of having multiple models. So instead of having a subscription to just Anthropic, Claude, or just OpenAI, ChatGPT, Microsoft is bringing in multiple models into the interface now. So you'll have things like Opus from Anthropic. You'll have GPT 5.5, I think, is the current one. And then as the Microsoft models themselves, MAI, start to come out more and more, and we just released some new versions yesterday, we'll start to see those. And so we're taking this multi-model approach within Copilot that allows you to work with all of the models and get the best of each of those models, for whatever task you're trying to do. As we were chatting, in prep here, I use the example that, Claude is fantastic at making PowerPoints. It's got great integration with PowerPoint. It's nice, presentable. It does a really, really good job. ChatGPT didn't do as good a job, right? And I mean, everybody's improving. I don't want to throw any mud, because I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses. But at the same time, if I'm looking for a process flow diagram or an info sheet on a process that I'm working on when I'm teaching my class, right? I can go into ChatGPT and it's going to create a great image. All the spelling stuff has been worked out and everything like that. And so really, if you think about all of these models having their strengths and weaknesses, and being able to use one interface for all of those, that's really powerful.
It is very powerful. And I think the multimodal approach is a smart approach no matter what, for people to get familiar with what's available out there. And if Microsoft's building an intelligence layer on top of it to say, okay, the user wants to create an image with graphics or with text on it, okay, automatically map to the AI that's in there that's going to have the best way to do that. Right. Let's talk about some beginner level use cases. So let's say organizations out there, they haven't upgraded yet to the M365 paid license version, but they're considering doing it, and they're not sure where to start, how to start. If you're sitting down with a CEO or senior leader in a company, they know what their challenges are, right? That are going on, and it's different in every single company. But how do you advise them to get started? Do you lay out the discovery of like what's going on in the organization, and then you move to the recommendation of licenses, and then this is how we're going to implement them? Sort of walk us through that basic process. Could be you or one of your colleagues, but like how do you address that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say in the enterprise, the vast majority of organizations have some flavor of this. Maybe only a couple hundred licenses of the M365 Copilot. Like I said, the Copilot chat is free. And we're seeing a lot more use of that. And that's more of that personal productivity. Hey, summarize this document, help me write this email, things like that. Right. And that's all kind of table stakes at this point, right? Where it's included with that licensing. And so there isn't the additional cost. And so I think a lot of people are kind of getting their own productivity gains. But where I'm seeing it fall down, especially when we're talking about that Copilot chat licensing, is that there isn't as much mind share within the organization as there really could and should be. Whether it be, one of the mistakes that we've seen is that organizations will roll out, peanut butter spread is the term you hear a lot, across multiple functions in the organization. So, okay, finance, you get 5 licenses, IT, you get 5 licenses, and marketing, you get 5, and the challenge with that is there is less of an opportunity for those groups to collaborate because their challenges and the way they're using the tools are very different. And so there's less of that opportunity to do that mind share and really maximize how the tools are being used. Even internally at Microsoft, we have all kinds of internal communication around, here's the prompt of the week, right? Here's I just had it do an analysis on my working style, looking at my strengths and weaknesses as an employee, where I can improve. And it was pretty darn good. It actually calls out some of the things that when you're having those really rough days and you're like, why am I playing traffic cop right now? And it told me, you're doing this too much, right? And that's not, you do it well, but that's not where your real value comes in. And so that sort of next level is the IQ. So work IQ, which takes it to more of a semantic ontology layer. And instead of looking at a specific document or a specific piece of data, now it's reasoning across all of it and being able to build a point of view to say, here's how you can use the tools better based on all of these data points. And then I'm looking for specific documentation. Well, it's going to pull back things from Teams and OneDrive and, various Loop components and Outlook and all these different areas that are related to that topic, as well as, business related data and things like that, to really kind of give you that complete picture. That's definitely the direction of this, but getting started with Copilot, and having those paid licenses, native integration inside of all of the Office suite, which is huge. So any kind of document you want to write, it's built into Word. Any kind of PowerPoint you want to built right in. So you don't have to do that context switching. You can stay right in that application. And those are some of the tips as to how people can maximize the tools right out of the gate.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And so you mentioned Microsoft 365 Copilot, as well as Work IQ. Is Work IQ a separate offering that has a layer built in?
Yeah. So it's it was announced back in I believe February, and sort of we just had more announcements about it yesterday during Satya's keynote. And really, again, it's that context. It's context about multiple areas of the organization, multiple disparate systems, where it brings it up into that semantic layer to be able to provide that context and be able to return all of that information, as opposed to having to check multiple sources.
That's that's very cool. I don't have experience with that product, and that's why I'm asking. Plus, our audience, I know it might be new to them as well. So, how does that compare to like the concept of the project in Claude or a project in ChatGPT, where it tries to frame up and scaffold some of that semantic layer? Sure. In there, is that similar, different? Is this Microsoft's version of it? What is that?
I would say it's similar on steroids, right? Okay. So, you're telling the IQ in the background what sources it should be connecting to, right? So it's similar in that, where you load the documents, you kind of give it some context, what you're trying to do. And most of this can just be done in the background. You don't even have to impact or turn anything on. And then you can have it look at other sources that maybe aren't part of that native environment, right? So we see the ability to work with some of our partners. We're big partnerships with SAP and Snowflake, and being able to tap into some of that data as well makes it super powerful. That would be a big differentiator from a project, right? Because you're not going to be able to point it at an SAP database and say, hey, go get this information back.
Interesting. So there's it seems like there's other connectors that are available within the Microsoft ecosystem that are more native to the work IQ,
exactly,
versus like Anthropic or OpenAI and the other offerings out there.
Yeah,
that's good. That's excellent. That's fantastic. So
I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes, honestly. Sorry, I cut you off there. I am looking forward to seeing how it all kind of comes through, because these take time to build, and there'll be multiple iterations. But I wrote an article about it last month, and just the rise of this semantic and ontology layer. We're not the only ones doing it, but where does the value come in, really, and how does this get governed and things like that, right? So, it's very, very interesting to me, and I'm definitely going to be following it closely.
Yeah, it's very important. That's why I want to ask another question. I asked another question about it, is because it's a really important. I view that as the next level. Once people are working with AI and they're starting to get used to how to get the benefits of it, really having a stronger semantic layer is absolutely critical to be able to become more efficient, become more integrated with your strategic thinking, and there's just a way of operating.
Absolutely.
That you're doing. Let's talk a little bit about the agentic side. And agent's a big buzzword out there today, but let's talk about from a Microsoft ecosystem perspective. I know there's this concept of agents that I think are up in the top left with the Copilot, when you can create the agents and so forth. Researcher agents, or there's finance agents with Excel and so forth like that. What's sort of like a simple, not I know there's complex ways to do it. But what's like a simple example of an agent that's in Copilot? How does it work? What is it? How does it bring value to the organization? Like, what are the benefits of using an agent, just using like the normal chat?
Sure. Yeah. So you think of like Researcher, you mentioned that one. And that's a super powerful agent. It's one of the first ones that we released. And oftentimes it's likened to PhD level research into a certain topic, and going and grabbing that information from numerous sources, right? So, for instance, I want to do an overview of a company that, July 1 is our new fiscal year. There's a potential we'll have a little bit of turnover in accounts, and so I get a new account. The first thing I do is go to Researcher and be like, tell me everything I need to know about this account. And then it goes to all kinds of places. I couldn't even list all the places, right? But you think of corporate filings, corporate announcements, websites, 10Ks, 10Qs, all of that type of stuff. Plus all of any internal stuff, right? Ongoing projects in flight, who the former account team was, right? And so aggregating all that information into a nice, neat summary. And then, I want to go deeper on a specific topic. I see that CAGR was down 3% year over year. Can you tell me more about that? And it can elaborate further and go deeper and tell me why CAGR was down last year by 3%. So, super powerful. I know a lot of the education research is using tools like that nowadays because of its power and capability. So that's just one example, and those are sort of what's built in to Copilot 365 or M365 Copilot. I always, we change the name so frequently, I lose track. But then there's this ability and notion of creating your own agent. And you think of it as sort of almost like micro automations, I'm sure that a lot of the folks in the audience may have heard of microservices, right? Where instead of having this big monolith server, we're breaking it up into all these little applications to help it run more efficiently and, save some cost, hopefully, and things like that. Well, think of agents as sort of these just micro automations that you can do. You tell the agent, I want to be able to do research on what the latest AI announcements are from Microsoft. These are the dozen or so websites that Microsoft has that puts all these announcements out. Put together a nice list of everything that was released in the last week, and then you can put a list together, and then you can save that as an agent and tell it to run, every Monday at 8 a.m. Now, when we look at co-work, now we're talking about stringing agents together, bringing in other applications, right? And so now you're talking about, okay, well, I want to have that weekly job run where I go out and search those agents, but now I want to automate that process so far as gather them all, put them into a customer-ready PowerPoint, give me a summary in an email as to what these are at a high level, and then give me a PowerPoint that I can send out to my customers. Now, I still check it because it's still in beta, right? It's still being built. It's still in preview here. But it puts together a great PowerPoint of sort of all the top announcements. It looks at all the different areas, all the different websites we're talking about. And so that's going through, if you think about it, it's going through an agent that's specific to those websites, searching those websites. It's an agent for scheduling the process to actually go and do that search, right? It's an agent for building the PowerPoint template, using a PowerPoint they call skill, which is, using an application or some type of process that you've defined. And then finally, sending that email, right, is another agent, right? So, and I'm sure there's more behind the scenes that I'm not even thinking of, but, from a simple standpoint, you're talking about 4 independent agents there that are being brought together to help automate some of my workload. Right. And there's a lot of those types of things. You think about preparation for the week. You think about all of your meetings and all of the notes that you've captured over the week and all that, emails, and bringing all that together and say, okay, what are the top 10 things I need to accomplish in the next couple of days here? And so really, really powerful stuff there.
Yeah, that's excellent. So where my mind went as you were talking about that is, okay, let's talk about the practical application of that, because what you just described makes a lot of sense to a technology professional, to a systems thinker, right? But what about the more technology newbie or the non-technical C-suite leader who just heard a bunch of terms like and things like that? So how easy is that for our listeners to actually put in place? Can they just go into the Microsoft 365 Copilot and say, I want to have a process. I want to research this company who's a new client and share some results about that, and also draft a plan for how I would engage with that client. Is it as simple as that? And then the Microsoft ecosystem will go figure out what agents to launch, or do you have to go and micromanage sort of your plan that you just walk through? Is it how easy is that for a more newbie or less trained professional to do?
Sure. Yeah. The researcher agent, it's that straightforward. I want to research this company. I want you to give me a summary of these things that are most important to me. Go. And it'll do that. And then if maybe you want some refinement or something, that's the great part about all of these interfaces. You can speak plain English, right? You can type plain English to it. You can speak to them, right? They'll talk back to you now. And then, when we think about some of the more workflow type automations, again, relatively straightforward. Co-work, like I mentioned, is in preview, and only customers in the Frontier program can get access today. But that's gonna come out soon. And what I find is ask it, right? Ask it, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Ask me the questions that I need to answer to help you build this for me, right? They're really good at telling you what it needs. And we think about refinement on documents and bringing clarity, being very, very specific in the results that you're looking for. Don't give me the fluff. Don't tell me how brilliant I am, right? Just give me the breakdown of what I need to do to make this happen. um, you know, and it can go in a whole lot of different directions. It can say, you should go build this automation in Power Automate, and that'll get you what you need. And if Cowork can't do it for you, but oftentimes it can really handle what you're looking for. And if it's unclear, it'll ask you questions. And what's really kind of becoming more predominant is that instead of even having to retype the question, it'll give you, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want that? Just click whichever one you want, right? And then it goes. Or if you say, I want all three, I'll take all three. But it's much better about sort of leading you down a path. And the great thing is you can interrupt it, right? And you can say, whoa, that's not what I'm trying to do. Let's hold off, come back. They do really work like that conversational mechanism.
Yeah, and that does make it very powerful, and that's an important aspect of it. So let's talk about one of the challenges that I've seen out there, talking with companies that are already engaged in the Microsoft ecosystem with Microsoft 365, et cetera, but not all of their workforce has access to the M365 Copilot.
Right.
And so then I asked the question, well, why? And they said, well, we have to justify, we need a business case around this. So with the amazing power that we're talking about here with AI and how it can really improve things, what are your thoughts and ideas around, how we get decision makers in the organization to make the mindset shift, to roll out to empower more of the workforce with AI and give them the appropriate hand-holding education, guidance, what have you, in order to do that, so they don't have to overthink the $30 a month per person justification, right? Which is less than an hour of most people's time in most companies, right? So what is that? Why do you think there's still hesitancy there, and what do we do to get around it to make it more of to unlock more of the value of what AI can bring to the workforce?
Honestly, one of the biggest ones is naivete. They don't use it themselves, or they only use it to, make images of their buddies playing golf, right? There's definitely a component of that where they just don't appreciate the power because they haven't seen it firsthand. We've also seen, we had some negative feedback about Copilot for a while there, right? And it got a bad rap for a little bit. But all I can say is come back and try it again. I think you'll see a very, very different experience. I had a technology leader once liken it to an iPhone with an Apple Watch. And, the Apple Watch, it's nice. It gives me the time, and it will give me some notifications, and, it's neat, gives me some stuff that, I'd have to pick up my phone for, but really I can't live without my phone. And it's moved far beyond just that. It is genuinely a time saver. Whether it's bringing together spreadsheets, or bringing together a summary of briefs, or you start to see a lot of things like quarterly earnings sheets and communication being put out with this technology. Now, I still check everything, right? I check my sources, I verify before something goes out. But the power of the ability to save that much time, candidly, I'm a slow reader, especially when it's something that, is technical or really I need to take in. But if I can summarize it by section or however I like, it's going to help me understand really where I need to focus, right? And things like that are super important and big time savers. So I think first and foremost, use it yourself, right? Try it out. use it in the context of your day-to-day work. Are you, I mean, look, we've got CFOs that still love working with spreadsheets, and they'll still work on spreadsheets, right? Instead of having to, remind yourself how to build a pivot table, tell Copilot, hey, I want to build a pivot table with this data, go, and it's going to do it a heck of a lot quicker than you can do it by hand.
Yeah, that's so use it yourself, start practicing with it, see where the benefits are for you, and then sort of like as a leader, extrapolate that to the organization and say, wow, like if we rolled this out across the organization, that would provide a lot of benefit.
Yeah, you'll see it. You will see it if you use it, for sure.
So as we're wrapping up here, Chris, if a CEO or senior leader at a company is listening right now and they feel like they're falling behind because they're not adopting enough AI in their organization yet, and they're just concerned about fear of missing out, what's the one simple move that they should be making this next week?
I would say the most important thing would be to understand why you can't move forward, right? Are there blockers from legal? Right? Are there blockers from IT? We're just overwhelmed. We don't have time to roll this out, right? Are there concerns about security, governance? Identify what that holdup is. Identify what is stopping you and push through that, right? This can be deployed at a very, very simplistic, inexpensive, quick win level, and it can be also transformational for an organization. Some of the things that we've seen, automations that take place with some of the more advanced agentic workloads are saving companies millions of dollars. It's incredible. Microsoft's own stories, they're all public, around how we've dramatically reduced our support cases, our supply chain, our financial closes, and all of those types of things. Like I said, all public out there, and it's incredible the changes that have been made and the millions of dollars that have been saved as a result.
Yeah, there's so much. That's what gets me excited and gets me out of bed every day, Chris. Exactly what you just said. There's so much value to unlock in organizations when you pair people with the power of AI today and what it can really bring.
Yeah, and I think the hard part for guys like you and I is that there aren't enough hours in a day to play with this stuff, right? There's so much cool stuff out there. It's just you can only do so much.
Exactly, and that's why we have these podcasts, so we can talk about this, because you know a lot about Microsoft and the ecosystem, and so how can as we're wrapping up, how can folks contact you or reach out to you? We can put it in the show notes. What's the best way to?
I'm always available on LinkedIn. Very, very active on there. Love to sit down, have a half-hour chat. Always willing and open if I can find the time, of course. And you're not looking for a job, because I can't help with that. I get a lot of those. But feel free to reach out, pick my brain. I love talking about this stuff. I love that sort of that bridge between technology and strategy and the impact that it can make. So yeah, definitely feel free. I mean, I've got a YouTube channel. I got all kinds of stuff up there, but one-on-one's the best way to go, I feel.
That's excellent. So we'll include that information in the show notes in case people are driving and things like that.
Appreciate that.
Really appreciate your time, your insights. Is all this, every conversation we have in this podcast is very unique. And this one, we got really into some good practical aspects of the Microsoft ecosystem and how it relates to AI and how it can practically apply to companies. And I really appreciate you for sharing that, Chris, because very experienced, knowledgeable, and unique perspective on all this. So thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me, and just have me back again next week, because I'm sure we'll see a bunch more changes.
We'll have you on every week as a recurring guest. Sounds like a great plan. Thank you for helping us cut through the noise, Chris, and really appreciate it. For those of you listening, appreciate you listening. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.
Thanks all.